Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining today's Estimating and Bidding Ask Me Anything workshop event brought to you by BART Small Business Support Services. With that said, let's go ahead and begin today's workshop with an overview of today's agenda and introduction of the SBSS program by our very own SBSS Pre-Award Program Administrator, Mr. Paul Pendergast.
Real quick, because we want to kind of depart some really great information with everybody, but then of course the biggest takeaway and benefit to this kind of workshop is having everybody ask the questions which are really most relevant to their firm. And from the bidding and estimating perspective, we want to make sure that since every company is different, that we really give you some takeaways. So we'll introduce the pre-award, we'll talk about the program overview, which many of you know because we've interacted with you, then our rules of engagement, and then we'll kick it off with Martin Lee from M. Lee Corporation, who just has a wealth of experience working with BART bidding contracts. So next slide, Michael. So I am just honored. I just love working with Michael Reyes. I just think he is just such a wonderful, amazing expert with so much construction management experience. So many of you know me, so we don't have to worry about that. But next slide, Michael. So just in short, as many of you know, the SBSS program, which is funded by BART, is focused on the pre-award and the post-award. Obviously, very different services for each end of that spectrum because we want to make you in the pre-award as competitive as possible so that we can move you over to the post-award. Next slide. Okay, great. Michael, do you want to talk about the look ahead and then take it from here?
Yeah, sure, Paul. Thank you. So as you can see on your screen, September 2023, we actually have a project out to bid right now. It's the Aine Sighting Improvement Project at the Bay Fair parking lot. And now in September, we also expect to see a solicitation for the roof replacement at Bay Fair. And in October, we've got another project coming out, Coliseum Station Elevator Modernization. And TBD dates, these can hit anytime. We see the train control room repairs and the train control network switches and the LMA UPS system installation. And if you want more information regarding the BART procurement opportunities, and many of you have gone through our navigation session, please feel free to reach out to me or use the link that you see on this page. And we are going to supply this presentation today in a PDF format for the attendees. So let's go ahead.
Michael, could you, before you move to the slide, could you talk a little bit more about the RFP that was just released?
Oh, yes,
the
absolutely.
top one.
Yes, so the Aine Sighting Improvement Project is an A license C12 type of project. BART's looking for A, B, and C12 licenses. Embedded within that, there are opportunities for, say, hauling, security. I heard there's a security company on today's workshop, but there's several opportunities in there that just run several tiers below the prime tier. So be sure to be on the lookout. If you need help accessing the plan set, let us know. Reach out to Paul or myself, and we'll show you how to access the plans. And we can also help you understand where in the plans opportunities may lie if you don't see them right off the bat when you do review the plan set. Today's workshop is special because it's an Ask Me Anything workshop. We're going to get through the meat of the workshop. And after we do, this is more of an intimate setting where you can ask questions. So if you have questions, be sure to populate your questions in the meeting chat so that way we can establish a list of questions to go by and go in certain order here. The rules of engagement today are there are no wrong questions. This is an opportunity to ask questions in a small group setting. We don't have hundreds of you guys on today's call. We kept it very, very small, very intimate. Like we said, we respect everyone's confidentiality. Professional respect is our highest goal. And also understand that we cannot answer questions regarding any specific BART contract or BART project because those would be project RFIs specifically going to the contract administrator. And also understand that we don't make recommendations or referrals, say to consultants or providers. We can only provide you with information for consideration. So that being said, moving on to my next slide here, is the estimating and bidding Ask Me Anything kickoff. And that being said, I'd like to introduce someone who we have worked with very well and very successfully over the years, Mr. Martin Lee. He's the owner of the M. Lee Corporation. Martin, are you there? Let me see if I have you unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, so everyone, this is Mr. Martin Lee. I enjoy working with him, and there's a lot of value that he's going to deliver today. So be sure that you have your notes handy and that you have your questions ready. So populate the chat box with questions, and then I'll meet you later on during the Q&A session. Thank you. Go ahead, Martin, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be here. I actually have the honor working on BART project in the last 20 years, and I've been working in the San Francisco Bay Area in the last 40 years, specializing in cost estimating and scheduling on all types of projects. I've provided cost estimating and scheduling services in the Bay Area on over 1,500 projects of different sizes and different types. Michael, next one, please. For today, I want to cover this. Pretty much I would like with the next 45 minutes or so to talk about the cost estimating and bidding in general. And whenever there's opportunity, I will point out what are particular points we need to pay attention to when we bid BART projects. Pretty much I will start with what an estimate is, and then look at different types and uses of cost estimate, and then see the various components on the estimate, and then walk through briefly on how to prepare a bid estimate, and then talk about a few key cost and risk factors, and then discuss about the key consideration specifically for BART project there, and then ending with how to avoid estimating pitfalls so that we can improve our cost estimate. At the end, I have prepared a bid estimate example to wrap up the discussion, and then follow with Q&A. Let's look at what the definition of a construction cost estimate. The most common definition, I listed here 3 of them. One is summation of individual cost elements using established methods and valid data to estimate the future cost of a program based on what is known today. So you can see the construction cost estimate, everything that you need to take care of in terms of scope and convert it and interpret them in terms of cost. But you need to follow a logical and organized method so you won't miss anything that's important in terms of cost. And best is if you have a pool of historic data or sources to rely on what kind of pricing should be based on. And also keep in mind when you bid a job is the cost you're going to incur is when you pay out your vendors or contractor in the future, but based on today's what you know. The next definition also commonly used by AAC is a compilation of all the probable costs of the elements of project or effort included with an agreed upon scope. The scope is important to keep working the scope and the cost. A more commonly understood definition is a statement of cost of work to be done, of how much a piece of work will probably cost. An estimate or bid is to answer, how much you will get or the owner will pay you for that type of work you're going to provide them. Next one, please. Let's look at the various types of estimate and the uses. There are basically 3 major types. The estimate by owner. The owner usually have their own consultants to provide them what the budget, what kind of funding they need to put aside for any particular project there. And then the contractor estimate mainly during the bid time to be prepared by general contractor or trade contractor or any supplier. So and then later on, you convert the bid estimate into bid proposal. The goal is to win the project within a reasonable profit. And there is another type if you get a job during construction, there are always change order you may need to take care of. Then you have to do estimate to see how much the change or the scope will cost you, so you can negotiate and settle down the cost with the client. Next slide. So for the contractor and subcontractors estimate, we usually focus on the pre-construction services. Sometimes the contractor need to provide the owner if they are the design builders or CMGC. But in most of the smaller project, probably BART would bid out in a lump sum basis. So then the contract estimate mainly focus on the bid estimate and for the bid proposal purposes. There are other type like change order estimate and progress payment, etc. Next, let's look at the various components on estimate. So a cost estimate generally. So basically a typical cost estimate would consist of, you have to put what are the basis estimate, like what the document used, what the scope of work you are estimating, and any assumptions and qualification you need to take care of. And then once you do an estimate details, you load up to an estimate summary, so you can see the bottom line there to whether to see that's a reasonable or not reasonable lump sum you're going to bid as a bid proposal. And you also should include some additional backup information, like the vendor's quotation or any suppliers or specialized subcontractor that will support your work. And estimate can be divided into different type of cost. The major cost categories are the direct cost, the indirect cost, allowances, contingencies, and other items. For any direct cost, we look at what are the material costs, labor costs, and equipment costs. And any estimate item should include a description of your work item and the quantity, unit measurement, unit cost. And then you extend the quantity and times the unit cost to come up with a total cost there. So let's look at each type of cost and look into a little bit more detail. First is the material cost. The material cost would include the base cost, the sales tax, and the handling, freight, and delivery, and any premium or discount that you get from your vendor. And the labor cost would include the base cost per prevailing wages. Prevailing wages, as you all know, that it depends on where the location of the project. Each county have different prevailing wages. And then you start with the basic hour rate, adding fringes and benefits, plus any payroll, all the related payroll tax, the workers' comp, and overhead and profit to come with a total billing rate for any laborers or journeyman. And remember that if you are doing work on an overtime basis, use the overtime rates instead of the regular rates there. Next one, let's look at the equipment cost. equipment cost, whether you are going to rent an equipment or you already own them. Either of them, we need to account for operating costs, including fuel and gas, and also the cost for operators. If you own a piece of equipment, need to account for what are the maintenance costs, depreciation, and value and residual value at the end of the life of the equipment. And we do not know the rental cost of each particular piece of equipment. We usually call the rental equipment rental company to get a quote, or as the ballpark, we can also consult a Caltrans equipment rate. They call Blue Book. Caltrans issue these equipment rates on an annual basis, usually from April 1st through the March 31st of the next year. And in addition to direct cost, we also need to capture the indirect cost. That's very important. Indirect cost, basically the cost that generally apply to the project as a whole rather than a piece of work. It include all the general conditions, the job site general requirements, and the office overhead, office support, and insurance and bonds. Bonds are usually in three types: the bid bond during the bid time, and then payment and performance bond. And it's important at the end to see how much profit margin you want to get from the job, and then add the profit at the end. And let's look at other types of the cost in a typical estimate. There are allowances, contingencies, and mobile demo, punch list, cost escalation, etc. The allowances cost pretty much cover any item that's predictable but undefined project scope. For BART project, usually the owner in his or her schedule of bid item, they list what amount of allowances each the bidders need to carry. And for contingency to cover any uncertainties in either estimating process or because that particular job specific need. It covers errors and omission, market risk, labor, material, and schedule variability. And next, we put all the components on one page for your convenience. This is basically serve as a consolidation or summary of all the components. Again, each of them have different particular nature, and then we need to pay attention to. And then actually there are two pages of consolidation. One is those typical one. The second one are more kind of on a percentage basis or on a lump sum basis. Let's see how we usually prepare a bid estimate. The general approach we usually take is first we need to scope out the project from bid documents and from the observation during the site visit. After we know the scope, we quantify the scope and price all the items that relate to the scope work we are going to include as part of the project. Once we have a draft estimate, remember to double check the math and double check all the major items, make sure they are mathematically correct and make sense when we do a detailed bottom up and then do a top down look at. And always remember to do a QA/QC and a review and revise. Once the team is happy with what the bid estimate should be, then we'll use that amount to or make some additional adjustment at the end by management to the bid estimate to be used as a bid proposal, either bid to the general as a subcontractor or bid to the owner if you happen to be a prime contractor. Let's see how we generally scope out the project. In scoping out the project, most important thing is to collect all the relevant information. So they usually be found in the bidding document, which include generally the plans, specs, bidder's instruction, the bid form, or sometimes they call the schedule of bid value, bid item there. And then there are always some addenda visual after the first package of the bid document. And then remember to look at the site, what any site specific need to scope out. And sometimes any particular client, as each public agents, they may have particular requirements need to add cost to. And then look at the timing, referring to the project schedule, whether that's reasonable or too aggressive or too long, so that you can adjust the time value of the bid cost there. And if bid to the general contractor, remember to see if any particular general contractor have their own specific requirement for each of the sub if they want to bid to them. And after we scope out the project, then we quantify the scope. In the market, there are several tools that we generally use, like Bluebeams, on-screen, Plane Switch, Pro apps, etc. But the most widely used in any estimate, I think, is using Excel spreadsheet, because that's more commonly understood and user-friendly. But when you use Excel, be sure that to check every formulas or linkage. And when we take off the quantity, usually not just from the plan, but also check the spec. If any item need to take care, also take them off, itemize them. We also look at other related documents, like if do earthwork and need to see what type of soil call out in the technical report, or where is the water table level, that kind of thing. And then next, we put all these bidding estimate preparation on one page. A few tables there. Hope that they will help to consolidate what they are. Next, let's look at the cost and risk factor during the bid estimate preparation we need to take care of. We all know that estimate is not just a science, but it's also an art. So it involves logical, organized approach, as well as a lot of judgment there. But estimate is so important, especially accurate cost estimate, because it's critical to the success of any project. When we do business, we always consider the cost, and an accurate cost estimate would give you a very good picture what the cost you need to use for your baseline, and how you should organize and allocate your resources there. And the cost and risk factor, there are many of them, but basically they are all related various nature of a project or the process in preparing a cost estimate. They include like quantity related, quality, time, the market conditions, and what kind of delivery method, and who are the clients, where the project site is located, either urban or suburban situation, whether they're easy to access or not, is there room for doing setting up that kind of thing, and also where the allowed traffic route getting in and out of the project site. And they are all all this information can be found or derived from the bid documents. If not, need to put a query to the client for clarification. So let's look at a couple of judgment or related item we need to pay attention to. So again, during any course, according to experience and judgments, and also most important thing, what kind of productivity we need to put in any particular project based on your firm's historic data or refer to published information, and what kind of means and method for that particular job you want to use in order to complete the work. All these are important to come up with an accurate, more accurate cost estimate. Next, please. Let's look at a couple of key issues that specific for BART project. BART has some specific documents that we need to pay attention to. The first one is they call BFS, standard specification. The second is they also have a major project stabilization agreement. They call MPPSA, pretty much similar to project labor agreement. And another one is BART standard general conditions. All those three documents, you can find that under the BART website, BART.gov there, as looked at the bottom of this slide. There are other considerations like the percentage for SBWBE or MBE requirements, and pay attention to the bid schedule and what allowances are included in the bid schedule, and also what kind of bid document need to be submitted so that you will comply with all the bid requirements. How to avoid estimate pitfalls. The most important thing is to know the bid document well, to know what the existing condition of that particular project, and allow enough time to do the work, although almost all projects are really in a very tight schedule. And also reach out for quotations for special materials and also specialized subcontractors or suppliers. Check the math and make sure to capture all the project specific requirements and fill out the bid form as required by the bid instruction. So I've also prepared this checklist for any project. First, we need to know the project. So need to lock down what is the major project information. That includes the project name, the project location, and the schedule, like when is the bid due date, when the project start, and when the project going to complete. And list the scope of work that you are providing the bid for, and what kind of specific scope need to be excluded, and any particular agreement terms need to pay attention to, and the owner's information, the prime or general contractor's information you are submitting to the general, and also if you use any second or third layer subcontractor, also good to list the information as the checklist. And next page, I put a bid estimate example. This is just an example to show you what kind of format we usually use. Typically, for either material, labor, and equipment, we scope out the project, list out as a description, item 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing, and then quantify them, and then put a unit cost and extend it to a total. At the end, for material, we need to see whether material cost got from vendor include the freight or handling charges or not. If not, need to add to. Most important thing is check if the vendor price includes sales tax. Most of them, they would exclude them. We need to put them in as a separate item to come with total material cost. Labor costs pretty much to estimate what kind of labor hours or each type of journeyman we need to put in, and the total hour rate, which includes the base rates, all the fringes, benefits, and overhead profit on the labor category come up with total cost. Of course, equipment costs, any miscellaneous items there. Then we sum up all the costs, and then on top of those direct costs, we add all the general condition, general requirements, field office, at the general items for the project as a whole. And then after that, add the profit. Sometimes we add some contingency percentage because very risky nature of the project. And at the end, once you got a bid estimate, sometimes we adjust the bid estimate up or down, depending on the level of competition during the time or how eager we want to get a job, and then come with a total bid proposal. I think that covers a very brief talk on estimating and bidding estimate. So would like to answer any questions or any comments you may have.
Well, if I can quickly point out, thank you, Martin, appreciate that. That was a really great presentation there. The white papers that you saw in recent slides, we made those intentionally white so that way you can print those out and keep those as a tool of reference as you start doing your estimating and bidding. And we can go ahead and move on to some questions here. Flip to this slide. If you don't mind, I'll read this right off, Martin. Number one, can you define exactly what items should be included when a company develops their indirect cost figure? Now, would these be the same for all transportation agencies since they fall under the Federal Department of Transportation, generally accepted accounting practices?
Yes, actually, all the indirect costs are the costs that added to the direct cost. They pretty much cover the project as a whole, which includes all the general conditions, general requirements called out for that particular project, plus the office overhead and the field overhead, and any insurance and bonds cost. Those we usually call indirect cost. And each public project need to follow the general Federal Department of Transportation guideline or practices. But in addition to that, most of the public agencies, they have their own additional requirement as well. So that's very important to check that out for each of the particular agency.
Okay, excellent. I see a hand up. Darlene Jones, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Michael. My question is for Mr. Lee. You made mention earlier in the presentation that we're to use the overtime rates instead of the regular rates. So in the, as your presentation was going along, I was hoping that you would get to the point when are we supposed to use the regular rates instead of the overtime? Like, do we ever use them or don't ever use them and just use overtime every time we bid? That's my.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Doreen. Yes, for usually we use regular rates, but if the project is in very tight schedule, like I believe your business in trucking, right, Doreen? Like in trucking, like they have the Teamsters rate there. So usually you think you need to employ your workers to work over 40 hours a week. And then anytime above that would need to pay 1.5. But if you work in during a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, sometimes we need to pay double time rate there. The bottom line is all depends on the schedule of the project, especially what kind of schedule the general contractor would impose to each of the individual trade contracts.
And even when the scope says that the work is at night, charge the night differential rate as well, correct?
Yes, but if you order shift and night shift, usually it's the regular hours rates there. But if that night shift is more than 40 hours a week, that's the overtime will kick in. And also check the union agreement. Yeah, you're welcome.
Excellent. And we have a question from AC Matthews of Matthews General Engineering and Construction. AC?
Oh, yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Lee, for this information. Now, my question is about progress payments. Now, will we go by the schedule as well? Because, you know, and I know for sure we have to kind of estimate how much work going to be done by the end of the month. Right. So we got to turn our invoice in by the 20th to get paid for the next month.
That's correct.
The 30th of the month, right?
That's correct. Is it? Because usually the last few days you estimate what would you going to, how much work, additional work you're going to complete in order to comply with the progress payment is to work the end of the month, but you have to submit it to the general a few days earlier.
So would that be between the engineer and you know, like the super on the site to kind of agree on how much work could be done, or do we just look at the schedule and just know that work should be done by the end of the month?
Usually I would look at the schedule, and the engineer should also look at the schedule and to see what the as-built schedule, that means original plan for that, where as planned, sorry, and what I assume as planned, how much that period of time would plan to complete the work, and then they compare that as planned with as built schedule, the actual work completed, and then if that's lack of progress, and then they may need to adjust the as planned amount to the actual, because as planned pretty much an estimate amount, but as built is the actually happen. And then, but for the last few days, you have to use that as built compared with as planned to project into what the next few days that will need to cover the cost you're going to incur.
Okay, so you estimate the progress as well, right?
Yes, that's very important.
Yes, it is. So I asked.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And if I can add something to that, AC, is from the CM side and from the owner's rep side and from the site superintendent side, as a subcontractor, if you're communicating clearly what you anticipate billing for that month,
and there's no surprises. Like, if you do project, say, a 20% completion by the end of September, and it's communicated, they'll be communicating typically with the owner or the owner's rep in advance to that, so that there's no surprises or hiccups for when it does come time for you to submit your application. There won't be any surprises.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Michael. Oh, another thing I want to point out is if the comparing as built with as planned is lack of progress. Sometimes you need to catch up the work. So the next few days you may need to accelerate your work. So that you probably have to include more of the work to be done and need to ask for more money.
Excellent.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
for that information. Thank you.
And we had a hand up earlier for Gennaro. Gennaro, would you like to ask your question? Unmute yourself. Go ahead. See if you can unmute yourself there, Gennaro. See it? There you go.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my question was union versus non-union. I guess the way you guys differentiate is whenever we're a non-union company, so we usually go the prevailing wage route. Does that make any difference to BART when they're issuing these kinds of contracts and stuff?
Yes. Actually, for BART project or for all public work project, the requirements are prevailing wages, and that usually wages defined by the wages you pay, usually as paid by union contractor. If you are a non-union contractor, you pay union rate to your worker. Theoretically, that in comply with the prevailing wages requirement. But for BART project, they also have the agreement with all the union. As I mentioned before, and the project specific for BART project, that they call what they call master.
We call it the PSA. It's the
PSA there. So the MPPSA, and that pretty much an agreement with the union of various trades that they have, unless there's some particular reason, and sometimes the DBE or WB, if they perform not a substantial amount of work for the project, they can take exception from the MPPSA agreement. But also pay attention to if the job site is usually allow both union and non-union, but they usually have to go through two different gates, a union gate and non-union gate to the job site.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next slide here really quick. Go through these here. How can we understand better the top of project labor factors and how to apply percentages in the estimate? Martin.
Yeah, actually, the project labor factor is usually depends on how the productive rate would be for any particular project. When we talk about project labor, most important thing is based on your judgment of that particular project compared with your historic cost data to see, oh, is that project more difficult than what usually you would put the labor factor in, then you need to add certain percentage there. And like, for example, if the project is work on a confined space, then you need to add that loss of productivity. And also if projects that need a lot of preparation to prepare the work and need to clean up the work and then leave the project site, then that's a percentage you need to add to. particularly for BART project, they usually, if they are working close to any BART line, then they always need to only allow you to do work during non-revenue hours. That the window of work would be short, much shorter than usually 8-hour shift there. So usually we have 3 or 4 hours, but then that 3 or 4 hours that have to do, including a preparation work at the end, clean the up, make sure everything is clean before you leave, so that the BART can resume the operation smoothly. So that can be a big project labor factor need to add to a normal regular work product there, work project there.
Right, right. Thank you for that answer. And now we have a hand up, Miss Tana Harris. Tana, would you like to unmute?
Hi.
Oh, it's Nicole.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Lee. Thank you for all the information. We really appreciate it. So one of the questions we have and one of the struggles we face since we've been in the industry is we provide labor only. We're just recently getting into providing equipment, but our struggle is covering our cost on top of the labor rates. And so we've been trying to get creative in how we present our bids to the clients, because just a small list of things that is identified here for what goes on top of your labor would not cover our expenses. So how do we incorporate overhead, indirect costs, things of that nature when we have no material or equipment to put it into?
Yeah, I share your concern and challenge, Nicole. It is the most difficult part among all the cost elements, how to price labor cost, because the labor productivity or the labor factor is so dynamic there. What we usually do is, in addition to all those prevailing wages or union agreement fringes and benefit there, and we add a factor we call a field office overhead or general overhead that we need to put on top of what we need to pay our laborer. And also to look at the history of, based on previous projects, how much additional cost I need to put on top of the money I pay my worker, so that's the billing rates I need to put in my bid estimate and bid proposal, rather than just the union rates that I pay my workers. So even if I feel that that project is more risky, more requirements, and the working condition not that ideal for any worker I put in the project job site, I also add some contingency to cover that risk there. Especially if some workers, you put that in, they are not happy with the job, they move quickly away, you have to struggle to find a substitute for that. That's in between, that's a cost there as well.
I'm sorry. So what type of contingencies? What is that? I'm not familiar with that. So what type of contingencies will we be looking for? And then how would that be billed? Or I'm sorry, how would that be estimated?
It's just mainly a judgment cost, and also to based on history to see, like if any particular project of similar nature that you're bidding that you used to work for, and then you know that, oh, the amount of money I pay my my operating engineer is $X, like for example $50, but on top of that, actually my expense is $75 on any laborers, but my profit there, and then that probably end up to be $100 or $120 there. So that's the kind of historic data I look into, and what kind of additional percentage or labor factor I need to add to the normal labor cost to cover that particular job when I bid for that particular project.
Okay.
So the percentage varies. It's tough to put in. Sometimes I put as low as 5%, sometimes as high as 20% or even 30%. All depends on the job and what type of general contractor I work for or bid to.
Thank you. So it sounds like it's a combination of knowing the project and knowing the GC, the networking portion of it. So to maybe have that dialogue with them about what we're offering and the whys of the whys of a cost, to have that, to be able to communicate that efficiently.
Okay, yes, I think that should be a good start point.
So Nicole, hi, it's Paul here. I just want to make sure, are we getting to your core issues? Did Martin's expertise, did that help? I know the issues are complex, but did any of what Martin talked about kind of shed any new light?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, did you hear me, Tana or Nicole?
Sorry, I was getting feedback out of the room before I responded. So it does, and just looking at the way he has everything laid out, and what goes where, it makes a lot of sense, and it's perfectly put together. It just would be easier for us if we had all those places to put the additional costs into. So it's taken us a little bit more of rubbing elbows and getting to know people to understand why our labor rate is higher than any other person's labor rate, because there's nowhere else to put it. But just understanding the terminologies like contingency, field office overhead, general office overhead, and that's where we've been trying to be just a little bit creative in how we put it out there, and more of that communication may be better easily understood as to why we're putting it out there the way we are. So
Okay.
Overall, Paul, the answer is yes to what you asked.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. I know it's a challenging question.
Excellent. So we have a couple more questions here that we can roll through. I don't see any more hands up. So let's run through this and we can probably wrap things up here. What's a good approach to estimating, phasing, and accounting for proper material and labor contingencies / escalation, Martin?
Yeah, that's a good question there. When we look at the phasing, so first of phasing, we involve additional mobilization and demobilization. We usually look at how many phases are needed, and then what, like for example, there are 3 phases for the project. And then we say, the first phase, when we first move in and move out, that pretty much cover the mobile and demo cost there. And then additional 2 phases, I put 3 to 5% as additional cost to take care of the mobile and demo and the loss of productivity. And that will account for both the material and labor. And then in terms of contingency, depends on the level or the quality of the documents and the type of project. It varies. Sometimes during in the bid during bid time, assuming all the documents are very well coordinated, and then there might be no contingency include in order to get the job. But if the document is not that good, and then there are 2 ways to do it. Either bid it as the project document called for and save whatever that the risk as a potential change order request, or we just add some contingency on top of those uncertainty to cover anything that may be needed to complete the project, so that there won't be that much change order, and then that will keep a better relationship with the general and with the owner. In terms of cost escalation, there are different percentage for material and labor. Like in the last 3 years, because of COVID, both material and labor cost escalation have been skyrocketing. But we see that currently the level escalation have coming down, sometimes coming down quite rapidly, and we see that the escalation will become more normal. But you never know, especially the Federal Reserve keep increasing the general cost, general interest rate. So you cost more to borrow money, that probably increase the cost of business generally.
Excellent. All right. And what are some estimating data resources and how to properly use them, Martin?
Yeah, the best data, I think, is your own company cost history, cost record, because each company operate differently, and also and also apply them and adjust them for any particular projects. So if there are lack of estimating cost data in-house wise, what we usually look at are the hours means cost of work. They have a lot of data there, but we always adjust them, sometimes adjust them quite dramatically. But for labor cost data, we usually keep a close check on what the union rates are. They usually change union rates during the summer of the years. And for the material cost sources, the best source is to call the vendors to get the most current pricing. The same for equipment cost or equipment rental. Call the equipment rental company to get the kind of cost or the rental rates.
So it's good to get real-time figures and also have a good handle on projections, some forecasts, escalations, right?
That's correct.
Understanding the construction cost indices that could be coming up in, say, 2024 as an example, right, Martin?
Yes.
All right. Well, there's no more questions. I want everyone to know that this is not the final event for estimating and bidding. The idea behind this is to now start supporting our SBs. Those of you who are engaging the SBSS program, please reach out to us, and we will start to funnel this down into even a smaller intimate setting where we can help you get better at what you're doing in terms of getting your estimating and your bidding and everything else that we provide in terms of our services. So if you have any questions, and before I finish, I want to make sure I thank Martin from Aine Corporation. He's been so wonderful. He's been a great supporter of all the SBs that have come through our program. But here's our contact information. We've got Fei Lu from the BART Office of Civil Rights. You also have Paul, the pre-award program administrator. You heard him speak earlier, and myself, Michael Reyes. I'm a pre-award consultant. So take a picture of this, reach out to us. And here's the contact information for Martin Lee and Franklin Lee of Aine Corporation. And they also have their website, www.mleecorp.com. And again, if you have questions, reach out to us and we'll help get you answers as much as possible. And also, if you have not been introduced to the SBSS program, don't miss out. Reach out to myself or Paul and let's get you connected. Okay, so thank you for joining us today, everyone. If there's nothing else, we look forward to talking to all of you soon. Thank you. Have a great day.